The summer heat of Los Angeles clung to everything, a suffocating blanket even inside our supposedly air-conditioned house. Not that I really noticed. I was too absorbed in my phone, scrolling through endless feeds of impossibly perfect lives. Another picture of Brittany's new car. Ugh. My life, by comparison, felt stagnant, especially my bedroom. It was tiny, barely fitting my bed, a dresser, and a desk. A glorified closet, really, and definitely not befitting someone of my stature. I, Madison, deserved more. I deserved space. Madison, Ethan, dinner. Mom's voice, chirpy as ever, pierced through my carefully curated bubble of online indignation. I sighed dramatically, loud enough for the walls to hear, and dragged myself out of bed. The dinner table was a battlefield of passive aggression most nights, and tonight I had a feeling would be no different. Ethan was already there, meticulously cutting his chicken into tiny uniform squares. Always so neat. So boring. Guess what, kids? Mom beamed, her eyes sparkling with an excitement that usually meant either a new diet trend or a forced family outing. My stomach clenched. Your father and I have been talking, and with Ethan heading off to college in a few months, we thought it was time for a little change. She clapped her hands together, a sound that always grated on my nerves. Ethan, bless his naive heart, looked up, a flicker of genuine interest in his eyes. Change? What kind of change, Mom? I rolled my eyes, already suspecting where this was going. Please, not another family vacation to a national park. I'd rather stab myself with a spork. Well, Mom continued, practically vibrating with anticipation, since Madison's room is so small and Ethan's room is, well, it's the biggest, we thought it would be a wonderful idea for Madison to move into Ethan's room once he leaves for school. A fork clattered against a plate. It was mine. My jaw actually dropped. Ethan's room? The corner room, with 2 windows, a walk-in closet, and enough space for a queen-sized bed and a sitting area, it was practically a studio apartment. My heart did a little triumphant jig. Finally, my efforts to complain about my cramped quarters had paid off. A smug smile started to spread across my face. Ethan, however, looked like he'd been slapped. His perfectly cut chicken suddenly seemed unappetizing. Wait, what? My room? But that's my room, Mom. All my stuff is in there. His voice was low, almost a whisper, a stark contrast to my booming internal celebration. Mom waved a dismissive hand. Oh, honey, you'll be at college. You won't need all that space, and Madison could really use the extra room. Think of it as an upgrade for your sister, a going-away gift from your loving parents. She shot me a conspiratorial wink. I bit back a giggle. A going-away gift. Perfect. I could already picture it. My new vanity. A bigger closet for my clothes. Maybe even a little chaise lounge for reading. The possibilities were endless. But I was planning on keeping my room for when I come home for breaks. Ethan protested, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. Where will I put my things? My computer, my books, my everything? He gestured vaguely towards his room's direction, as if conjuring an invisible mountain of his possessions. Oh, we'll figure something out, sweetie, Mom said, her voice dripping with an artificial sweetness that always preceded her most unreasonable demands. Maybe we can clear out some space in the guest room for your college things, or even the basement. It'll be an adventure. An adventure for him, perhaps. For me, it was a long overdue victory. I watched Ethan's face fall, the initial shock giving way to a pained resignation. He knew better than to argue with Mom when she was in this mood. He just quietly pushed his plate away, his appetite clearly gone. I, on the other hand, felt a surge of energy. My new room. This was going to be epic. I caught Ethan's eye across the table. He was looking at me, a silent accusation in his gaze. I just gave him a little shrug, a small, knowing smirk playing on my lips. What was he going to do? It wasn't my fault he was going to college and leaving behind the best room in the house. It was just good timing for me. As soon as dinner was over, I practically skipped back to my cramped room. The thought of it, in contrast to Ethan's spacious sanctuary, made me shudder. I couldn't wait to move. This was going to be the best summer ever. The weeks that followed were a blur of nervous energy and a growing sense of entitlement. Ethan was quiet, withdrawn. He spent most of his time in his room, the door closed, a silent protest against the inevitable. I, meanwhile, was already planning my move. I'd stand outside his door, phone in hand, and take mental notes. The light from the window is perfect for selfies. That corner would be great for my desk. The walk-in closet? Oh, the possibilities. Mom, in her perpetually oblivious way, was a willing accomplice. "You should start packing some of his things, Madison," she'd say to me, completely ignoring the fact that the person whose things they were was still living in the house. "You know, to help him out. It'll be so much easier for you to move in once his things are gone." One particularly hot afternoon, armed with Mom's permission and a sudden burst of motivation, I decided to take things into my own hands. Ethan was out with friends, a rare occasion that I seized upon immediately. I grabbed a few large black garbage bags and a roll of packing tape and marched straight to his room. I knocked once, lightly, a performative gesture since I knew he wasn't there. Then I turned the knob and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not a bad smell, just his smell. The faint scent of old paper, a hint of something citrusy from his room spray, and the distinct, clean smell of his clothes. It was a sensory overload, a glimpse into his personal world that I rarely got to see. The room was tidy, but lived in. Books were stacked neatly on a bookshelf. His computer setup was clean and organized, and a few posters of bands I'd never heard of were pinned to the walls. It was so him. A wave of annoyance washed over me. All this stuff. It was in my way. It was a physical representation of his claim to a space that was, in my mind, already mine. I looked at the desk, cluttered with pens and notebooks, at the framed photos of him and his friends, at the small, dusty model airplane hanging from the ceiling. A wave of possessiveness, ugly and sharp, swept through me. This was my space. I needed to make it mine, and that meant getting rid of all of his things. I started with the bookshelf. I picked up a book, a thick old one with a worn cover, and tossed it into one of the garbage bags. Then another, and another. I didn't care what they were, what they meant to him. They were just clutter. My heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and righteous indignation. This was the most proactive I'd been all summer. This was progress. The afternoon wore on, the sun beating down through the windows, making me sweat as I worked. I was a tornado of efficiency, a whirlwind of destruction. I packed up his clothes, his shoes, his old trophies from high school swimming, tossing them haphazardly into boxes I found in the garage. The photos on his desk, the ones with his goofy, genuine smile, I just shoved into a shoebox. I didn't even want to look at them. By the time I was done, the room was a shell of its former self. Bare walls, a few pieces of furniture, and a mountain of bags and boxes in the center of the floor. A pang of something that felt suspiciously like guilt pricked at me, but I shoved it down. This was my room now. He had to learn to let go. This was just a necessary part of the process. I took a deep breath, surveying my work. It was perfect. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he got home. The satisfaction I felt from clearing out Ethan's room was quickly replaced by a low-level anxiety as the afternoon bled into evening. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised purple shadows across the living room. Where was Ethan? I kept checking my phone, but there were no messages, no calls. My phone was silent, a black mirror of my own growing unease. Finally, just as the last sliver of orange disappeared below the horizon, I heard the front door open. My heart skipped a beat. A mix of fear and twisted anticipation twisted in my stomach. This was it, the confrontation. I tried to prepare a nonchalant speech. Oh, I was just helping out, Mom said it was okay. But the words felt flimsy, even to me. Ethan walked in, his shoulders slumped, a tired look on his face. He'd clearly had a long day. He tossed his keys on the entryway table and started walking towards the stairs, his usual path. I didn't say anything, just stood in the hallway, watching him. He didn't notice me at first. He just trudged up the stairs, one foot after the other, a slow, methodical rhythm. He got to the top of the landing and stopped. I watched as he reached for the doorknob of his room, his hand pausing midair. He looked at the door, then at me. His brow furrowed. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. "Why is your stuff in the hallway?" He was pointing to a few of my boxes I'd already dragged out, an act of premature victory. "Oh, I was just getting a head start on moving," I said, forcing a casual tone. Getting ready for the big switch. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me for a long moment, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. Then, slowly, he pushed open the door to his room. He stood in the doorway, motionless. His eyes scanned the room, from the bare walls to the pile of garbage bags and boxes in the center of the floor. The setting sun filtered through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a silent, surreal scene. I held my breath, waiting for the explosion, the shouting, the anger. But it didn't come. Instead, a sound, a quiet, choked gasp, escaped his lips. He walked into the room, his movements slow, as if he were walking through water. He knelt down next to a cardboard box and reached inside, pulling out a small, unassuming photo album. His hands trembled as he opened it. "Madison," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Did you throw out my things?" "I didn't throw them out," I said quickly, defensively. I put them in bags, to help you pack." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a raw, emotional pain I had never seen before. "My photo albums, Madison. My drawings from when I was a kid. All the notes from our grandmother before she passed away. They were in that box." His voice cracked on the last word. Did you even look at what you were doing?" The reality of what I had done, the cold, harsh reality, hit me with a sickening thud. The photo albums, the drawings, the old notes. They weren't just stuff. They were memories. They were his history. I hadn't even thought about it. I was so focused on my own desire for the room that I hadn't considered the emotional weight of his possessions. He just stood there, holding the photo album, looking from it to me, a silent question in his eyes. A question I didn't know how to answer. The atmosphere in the house after that was thick with a silence that was far worse than any argument. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just stopped talking to me, completely. He'd walk past me in the hallway as if I were a piece of furniture. At dinner, he'd talk to Mom and Dad, but if I tried to chime in, he'd just stop, a wall of cold indifference falling between us. It was unnerving. I tried, in my own clumsy way, to fix it. "Hey," I said one morning, finding him in the kitchen, making a smoothie. "About your stuff. I'm sorry. I really am." He didn't even look at me. He just scooped the last bit of yogurt into the blender and put the lid on. The whirring of the machine was the only response I got. The sound felt like 1,000 tiny needles, pricking at my skin, a constant reminder of my guilt. Mom, in her misguided attempt to mediate, just made things worse. "Oh, honey," she'd say to Ethan, patting his arm. Madison said she's sorry. It's just stuff. We can get you new things. It's not just stuff, Mom, he'd say quietly, his voice hollow. It's memories. Her face would fall, a brief moment of understanding dawning before she'd move on to a different topic, unable to handle the emotional weight of the situation. Dad, meanwhile, just stayed in his office, working, a silent observer of the unfolding family drama. He was the kind of person who hated conflict, and he seemed content to let this one play out without his interference. The move was scheduled for the end of the month, and I found myself in a strange purgatory. I was excited about my new room, but a part of me felt wrong. The joy I had anticipated was tainted by the coldness from Ethan. I'd walk into his room, now mostly empty, and instead of seeing my new space, I'd see the ghost of his belongings. The places where his posters used to be, the faint indentation in the carpet from his desk chair, the bare bookshelf that once held his life in volumes. My own room, which I had hated so much, now felt like a safe haven. It was small, but it was mine. The cramped space felt comfortable in a way Ethan's spacious room did not. His room felt empty, hollowed out, as if I had stolen more than just the space. I had stolen a piece of him. One afternoon, I was in the garage, looking for something, when I stumbled upon one of the boxes I had packed. It was labeled, in my messy handwriting, Ethan's junk. I knelt down and opened it. Inside, I saw a tangle of old phone chargers, a broken pair of headphones, and a small, faded t-shirt. I picked up the shirt. It was a t-shirt from some local fun run, the Valley 5K, and there was a picture of him and our grandmother on the front, both of them smiling, covered in sweat, holding up their medals. The image was grainy, but their joy was palpable. A sharp, unexpected pang of sadness hit me. I had never seen this picture before. I had never known he had this. It was just another thing I had dismissed as junk. I closed the box and sat there for a long time, the dusty garage and the weight of my own actions pressing down on me. I had wanted the room, but what I had really done was throw away a part of my brother's past. This story is just getting started, and the drama is only heating up. If you're invested in Madison and Ethan's journey, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single chapter. The day of the move was as humid and oppressive as the tension in the house. A U-Haul truck pulled up in the driveway, its rattling engine a jarring sound in the quiet street. Ethan's college was on the East Coast, a 6-hour plane ride away, and he was packing for the long haul. Mom and Dad were fluttering around him, trying to make the process as seamless as possible. But their cheerfulness felt forced and brittle. I was in my room, theoretically packing my things, but mostly just staring at the wall. My old room felt like a foreign country, a place I was about to abandon forever. I had been so eager to leave it, but now, a strange sense of loss washed over me. I wasn't just leaving a small room, I was leaving behind the person I used to be in it. The greedy, self-centered version of me who thought a bigger room would solve all her problems. Suddenly, I heard a crash from down the hall, a loud, sharp sound, followed by a curse. My heart leaped into my throat. I ran out of my room and down the hall, to Ethan's room. He was standing in the middle of the floor, staring at a shattered picture frame on the ground. A shard of glass glinted in the sunlight. In the center of the broken frame was a photo of him and Dad, taken when Ethan was a little boy. They were at the beach, and Dad was giving him a piggyback ride, both of them laughing. Ethan bent down, his hands trembling as he tried to pick up the pieces. "Careful," I said, my voice sharp with alarm. "You'll cut yourself." He ignored me. He just stared at the broken photo, his shoulders shaking. I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. He wasn't crying because the frame was broken. He was crying because he knew he was leaving. Because he knew he was leaving me. "I can't find the photo of me and Grandma at the beach," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The one where we're on the boardwalk. I looked everywhere for it. I thought maybe I'd just misplaced it. He looked at me, a silent plea in his eyes. You didn't throw it out, did you, Madison? My stomach dropped. The box in the garage, the t-shirt, the picture. I had seen it, and I had dismissed it as junk. I had thrown away something that was clearly so important to him. The lie caught in my throat. I couldn't tell him the truth. I just shook my head, my eyes wide with feigned ignorance. No, I don't think so. I don't remember seeing it. He looked at me for a long, heartbreaking moment, and in his eyes, I saw not just hurt, but a deep, profound sadness. He sighed, a sound of pure exhaustion, and looked back down at the broken glass. It's fine, he said, his voice flat. It's just a photo. But I knew, and he knew, that it was so much more than that. It was a memory I had carelessly discarded. Ethan's departure was quiet. He didn't say goodbye to me, not really. He just gave Mom and Dad a quick hug, tossed his last bag in the car, and got in. I watched from the living room window as the car pulled out of the driveway, the back window showing a brief, fleeting glimpse of his face. He didn't look back. The house felt different after he was gone. Quieter. Emptier. The silence was heavy, a physical weight in the air. I waited a day, 2 days, for the triumphant feeling I had so eagerly anticipated. But it never came. Instead, a hollow feeling settled in my chest, a deep, pervasive emptiness. Finally, on the 3rd day, I decided to move. I carried my small boxes from my old room and into his. The process was quick. There wasn't much to move. My clothes, my books, my laptop, a few decorations. It all looked so small and insignificant in the large open space. I set up my bed, my desk, and my dresser. I unpacked my clothes and hung them in the walk-in closet. The closet, which I had dreamed of, now felt cavernous and lonely, filled with only a fraction of my things. My vanity, a centerpiece in my cramped old room, looked small and out of place in the corner. The walls, which I had planned to paint, were just bare. I sat on the edge of my new bed, in my new room, and looked around. The room was beautiful. The light was perfect. There was so much space. And yet, it felt wrong. It didn't feel like mine. It felt like I was trespassing, a ghost in a place I didn't belong. The air was heavy with the absence of my brother, the echo of his life, his memories, his presence. The worst part was that I couldn't even enjoy the room. I'd catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and see a stranger, a girl who had taken something from her brother, something she could never give back. The space was a constant reminder of my selfish actions, a physical monument to my greed. I had wanted the room so badly, but now that I had it, I realized I had paid a price far greater than I had ever imagined. The loneliness was a physical ache. With Ethan gone, the house felt like a tomb. I missed his jokes, even our arguments. At least then we were talking. Weeks turned into months. Phone calls to him were brief and distant. He was still hurt, and I couldn't blame him. One evening, a wave of crushing guilt broke over me. I couldn't live with the secret anymore. The picture he'd been looking for. I had to tell him. My hands shaking, I called him. "Ethan?" I whispered. "It's me, Madison." There was a long pause. "I know," he said flatly. "What do you want?" Tears welled in my eyes. I need to tell you something. About the picture of you and Grandma from the beach." Another deep silence. "I found it. It was in a box in the garage. I didn't know what it was, and I threw it out." I was openly sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I was so selfish." "I didn't think about what those things meant to you." He sighed. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why did you let me believe it was lost?" I was a coward, I sobbed. I didn't want you to hate me. I don't hate you, he said, his voice quiet. I was just disappointed. You were my sister. I thought you would know better. I know, I said, a fresh wave of tears hitting me. I'm so sorry for everything. After a long pause, he said, I have to go. I'll talk to you later. He hung up. I was left alone in the beautiful empty room, my confession hanging in the air. I had told him the truth, but it only confirmed what I already knew. I had broken my brother's heart. The phone call didn't magically fix things. The silence between us was now filled with a deep, palpable wound. I had gotten the room, but it was a constant reminder of the price I had paid. It was a beautiful prison. I started to withdraw from my friends. How could I explain that my beautiful, spacious room felt like a cage? Every compliment felt like a silent accusation. The room, my once coveted prize, became a source of deep pain. The walk-in closet felt cavernous and lonely. I would lie in bed at night, replaying the past, the look on Ethan's face when he saw the empty room. I started spending more time in the living room, anywhere but my own room. I stumbled upon an old photo one afternoon. It was me and Ethan on the couch, squished together, both of us laughing. My head was on his shoulder. We were so close. A wave of powerful regret washed over me. I had broken that bond. I had thrown away something far more valuable than a room, my brother's trust, and a piece of myself. The fall turned into winter, and the chill in the air matched the chill in our family. A few weeks before Christmas, Mom and Dad announced Ethan was coming home for the holidays. My stomach twisted. I hadn't spoken to him since our phone call. When he walked in, the house finally felt full again. He looked different, older, more mature. He hugged Mom and Dad, then saw me. Hey, Ethan, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Hey, Madison, he replied, his voice cautious. Dinner was awkward, the tension thick. Afterwards, we were left alone in the living room. So, he said, breaking the silence, the room looks different. Yeah, I said, my voice low. It does. You like it? He asked. No, I said, the word coming out before I could stop it. Not really. He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Why not? You wanted it so badly. I know, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I wanted it for all the wrong reasons. All it's done is remind me how selfish I was. It feels empty. I miss you, Ethan. I miss us. I miss you too, he said, his eyes softening. I was really hurt, you know? Not just about the room, but about the pictures, the way you just threw away a part of my life. I know, I said, tears blurring my vision. I was a horrible sister. He sat down next to me. You weren't horrible, Madison. You were just lost. We all get that way. But you crossed a line, and it was a hard one to come back from. I know, I whispered. I've been trying to find a way to make it right. He gave me a small, sad smile. You can't fix it. You can only show me you're different now. And you can only do that by just being my sister again. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I can do that, I whispered. I can try. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. The rest of Ethan's visit was a step in the right direction. We talked more. We even watched a movie together. The chasm between us was slowly closing. The day before he left, he came into my room. I brought something for you, he said, holding out a small framed photo. It was the picture of him and our grandmother from the fun run. I had a new one printed. I didn't want you to forget it. I took the frame, my hands shaking. Ethan, thank you. It's a start, he said. I looked at the photo, then around the room. The beautiful, spacious room felt different now. It no longer felt like a monument to my greed. It felt like a home, a place where I had learned a painful but important lesson. He was right. I couldn't fix what I had done, only live with the consequences and try to be a better person. I had gotten the room, but I had lost so much more, and in the process, I finally understood what truly mattered. I looked up at him, a genuine smile on my face. You know, it's still your room too. When you come home for breaks, you can stay here. We can make it our room. He smiled back, a real, full smile that reached his eyes. Thanks, Madison. That sounds good. As he walked out, I knew that for the first time, I wasn't just in a room. I was in a home. A home filled with the possibility of forgiveness, redemption, and a new, more honest relationship with my brother. The beautiful, painful room had become a symbol of my greatest failure and my greatest opportunity for growth.